Hey everyone, welcome to an episode of In Range. I've got Sinistral Rifleman here, Russell Fagan, and that's because this is a brutality themed Q&A. And this is something we collaborate on, of course,
Yep.
heavily. Without you, there isn't really brutality matches anymore, frankly.
Yeah, you're the ideas and get eyes on it, and I'm the admin and logistics.
I'm the artist.
Yep.
You're the creator, right? So we got some questions here, but I think it's worth talking about at this point for people that haven't been, or just for people who have been paying attention, even just to try to consolidate what's going on. We've gone through a lot, and we've sort of at this point like kind of stabilized, for lack of a better term, the divisions.
Yeah, for 2025, we have all the divisions we're using published well in advance, and essentially we have two key formats. We have our like longer range open terrain style events where
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be shooting at 400 to 500 yards max. Then we have our CQB format events, and there's different divisions for each format. And the reason we're doing that is for CQB format, we can design stages around pistol calibers and shotgun calibers that are all safe to use at that under 100 yards distance, and
Mm-hmm.
there's no rifle calibers at those events. And for our longer range open terrain matches, we can design the stages around using actual rifle calibers at distance.
Right. So if you go to brutalitymatches.org and you see an event that's labeled CQB, that's 100 yards or in.
Hmm.
And if you see it like if you see high desert brutality or woodland brutality, something that doesn't have the words or the letters CQB in it, that's going to have targets that are probably 400 or even further in distance.
Correct.
And that plays into your division because, so for example, you know me, I love cowboy stuff, and we have Deadeye, which is our cowboy themed division. You can shoot Deadeye in CQB, and you can shoot Deadeye in woodland or high desert,
Hmm.
but you're going to have a different experience in both of those and have different requirements, even though they're both Deadeye.
Right. The core guns are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're in Deadeye, most of your shooting is going to be with a lever action and a pistol caliber.
Yep.
But
Or shotgun.
or shotgun. But in a open terrain match, you're going to be adding a rifle caliber gun to that to hit those further targets.
Right. So if you're a Deadeye SCQB, you could do that with your 1873 and just go at it. But if you're going to come to woodland with only an 1873 and let's say 45 Colt, you're going to have a challenge hitting a 400-yard target.
Correct.
So you probably want to augment your Deadeye loadout with something else like a 1894 and 3030 or something else so you can shoot long range and close range.
Correct.
But they're all Deadeye.
Right.
And the same thing applies to Cyberpunk.
Mhm.
Like you might shoot a Bullpup shotgun at CQB, but if you're going to come to high desert in Cyberpunk, you might still use something like that at some stages, but you need to use a 5.56 for the long range.
Correct.
Fair enough?
Yep. Another major change we've done is battle rifle cartridges are confined to a particular division for modern guns. We have heavy rifle,
Yeah.
and the reason for this is consistent scoring.
And-
We had attempted to do caliber dependent hits on targets before.
Yeah.
Too easy to confuse, both for competitors and ROs. So now there's a specific division for battle rifle cartridges, including newer stuff like 6.5 Creedmoor and 277 Sig Fury, where on steel targets that would require double taps for intermediate cartridges, you have a single hit. And that's a interesting division in that the equipment you're wearing determines how many accessories on your guns you can have.
Yeah.
So a baseline, you get like 3 accessory points, which can be used for optics and extended magazines and bipods, stuff like that. But if you had a plate carrier, you get an additional point. If you had a helmet, you get an additional point on top of that.
And when it comes to these people shooting battle rifle cartridges, we now have a special union for them, the Target Breakers Local 308.
Yes.
And we keep a repair crew with them as they move through the stages.
Yes. We always know what squad the battle rifle shooters are on because target repair is always there. So we were trying to integrate a target repair person to those squads where they are heavily populated with battle rifle shooters.
And we've got one other thing worth mentioning is that we've kind of put irons into a special historical status in which the round count is less so that people will actually be inspired to use their irons.
Yeah, so like Deadeye and Roaring Twenties divisions, Iron Sights is now a historical division, so you will have less hits required. And you can do this division with an M16A2.
Yep.
But you're going to have half the hits required. Conversely, if you have a iron sight intermediate caliber gun that you want modern hit requirements with, you could use it in American Standard Division.
So you're not forced to do that, but
Yeah.
it's an inspiration to use irons. And it goes back to when the What Would Stoners Do project was launched in 2017. Back then, the controversial statement was, don't worry about irons, just put a red dot on this thing. It's good. We're kind of there.
Right.
And so the point is, very few people use irons anymore.
Buying a red dot is arguably cheaper than buying backup sights for your rifle.
And
at
very
this
few
point.
people use them. They might have buoys on their gun, but most people don't have irons. And so, but if you want to use irons, and you said a good example of that would be a M16A2 type configuration or something like that, you could do so in the historical division, lowering the round count, but making it much more viable to actually finish the stages with irons.
Correct.
Cool. So now what's cool about this is we're just trying to tell you this is sort of stabilized. You go to brutalitymatches.org, and by clicking on that, you'll find that we have all the actual divisions and categories and rules are all kind of like stable now.
Yep, and they're easily found in separate documents named by the division. So you don't have to wade through 20 pages of stuff to find your division.
Right.
Just click on the division you're interested in.
So if you care about Cyberpunk, just click on Cyberpunk and read that one. And so that's cool. And one last neat thing we're doing is in CQB we've got posses and gang war.
Yes. So for Deadeye, it's a two-man team where you will have the modern hit requirements. There's no reduced hit requirements in the
You got to do the same thing a regular modern shooter would do.
And the reason being is you have two shooters with two sets of guns. And then we're doing the same thing for Cyberpunk, calling it Gang War. You will have to clear your guns on the clock quite regularly to move safely position to position and then reload in position. But given the way our stages are set up, it's not much of a modification from the way they're normally run to allow two people to shoot them at the same time.
So what's neat about this is you get to shoot like a team-like element, and we've seen that we did a beta of this already, and it was really fun to watch because guys were like strategizing, like I'll use my lever gun there and you use your shotgun over there, and when we move forward, we do blah blah blah. It's very engaging to watch. But the cool benefit of this is besides the communication and team element, which by the way is something you see in no other matches like ever. Is that it's the cost of one entry for two people.
That is the case for the Moonshine Brutality event.
Yes.
Given the nature of the event at SUPS, that is still 2 entries.
Understood. So it depends on the venue. All right. So hopefully that gives you a good summary of where we're at with Brutality. We're doing a lot of neat, interesting, different stuff here. And, come out and shoot in Cyberpunk Gang War and use a drone to attack an array of targets.
You could have a drone operator that isn't even on the stage with you because that's your second person.
Yeah, you could be shooting the stage while the drone operator is flying the drone in.
Yep.
Cool idea, huh? Yep. All right, so neat stuff. Pushing that envelope forward as we always do here at the end range, right?
Yep.
All right. Now I have gotten old and must reuse my readers. I've got questions. You ready?
Yep.
Frank L. How much does a Brutality match cost to run? What kind of costs are involved? Insurance, range rental, staffing, props, targets. What sort of expenses can one expect to do in order to offer an experience like this to hundreds of competitors at a time? And how does this differ to a local two-gun match? Well, I can start with that.
Yeah.
One, you got to find the venue.
Yeah, finding a venue that actually wants to host outside events can be challenging, and that can be as simple as the range is set up as a nonprofit, and they don't want to have people outside of their nonprofit organization running events there.
Yep.
There's
a lot of places like that.
Yeah.
We'll come to find.
Yes. So you have to find a range that's comfortable letting outside people come in and use the facilities. And I mean, quite frankly, half the venues we're using are ones that, like, I've shot 3-gun matches before and know the locals.
Not just they are allowing outdoor venues, they are allowing a unique and unusual outdoor venue.
Right.
And I'm not even talking about our participants or any of that. I'm talking about our stage designs.
Right.
We're way outside the norm, right? So
Yeah.
you have to find a range, one, that can facilitate the size of event we want to run, that the range looks cool, because just a bunch of square bays doesn't attract shooters. And they got to be willing to be cool, not only with our community, but also the kind of stuff we do.
Right. So I mean that's one reason we use the Parma Rod and Gun Club, is that place hosted the Iron Man 3-gun match that did vehicles and zip lines and crazy props like for decades, and that event doesn't exist anymore. But they're cool doing that kind of stuff, so it's easy for us to get approved to do the same kind of things there.
Yeah, so like we've had people asking it for understandable reasons, like sometimes just geographic reasons, like could you run one here or there, or could you run them in certain states that are more friendly to me? And the reality is we try. Like we didn't, you and I just went through, we called like every range in New Mexico a month ago.
Yeah, a lot of them that would appear to have been capable of hosting an event like this, and only one of them responded, and they said they weren't the right size for what we were going to do.
So this is harder than it seems, but all this comes back to expense. And the reality is, it's freaking expensive.
Yeah, so, I mean, depending on where the event is and how far we have to travel to run it, there's various expenses related to getting to paying for some of the staff's expenses,
Yep.
feeding the staff on match days.
Yep.
Um, the insurance is one cost that like that's a bill due at like every December, right?
Every year.
And then we have to do additional insureds for each range that we're using.
And by the way, it went up significantly this time, as you can imagine, as everything is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're looking into tens of thousands of dollars to run events at different facilities across the country.
And then, of course, the amount that you negotiate with the range itself.
Yep.
And do they provide targets? Do we have to buy the targets? Do we travel there? Do we have to cart targets there in a van?
Yeah. How much are the consumables? As far as targets and repair of those targets for running the event. It gets expensive really quick.
So just to put it all together without exact numbers, because it's not even worth it, and every venue is different, or every event is different. We do run these as these are for-profit events. Like this is a supporting in-range and the in-range project, for lack of a better term, and paying for your time. You're taking time away from your regular job to even do this,
Right?
And travel, all those things. The reality is, if you look at the amount of people signing up, we literally have the ticket prices, and I'm not kidding, as low as we can get them. And in some instances, not to go too much into this, I've actually lost money on a few of these. Like I came out of this negative.
Right.
And so I know people are like, wow, these ticket prices, but the reality is that's the number we have to be at to make this possible. And in some instances, it actually didn't work out.
Right.
Yeah.
And the difference between running a club event and running these across the country is your club event has all the resources there.
Targets are there, bays are there. You're not paying for it.
Right, and it's much easier for people to take like half a day off to set up a match before it starts than to drive 2 to 4 days back and forth across the country to set stuff up.
Typically at a local event, you're not paying to use the range, but what's happening is they're taking all the proceeds from the match.
Yeah, all the money goes back into the club or back into the particular division running the event.
And the insurance is probably an umbrella for the club. You're not taking that on your own.
Right.
All of that. So when we run these, when you see a Brutality match, everything you see there, the bays, the targets, the ROs, as much as we can, us, the food, any facilities, any of that stuff, that's all just consuming almost all of the income from the event.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, even in cases where we negotiate with locals to help us out, provide the targets, for example, we support them by buying additional targets to replace their targets over time and expand their capabilities.
The goal is to go to a range, have great, obviously, relations with the locals and the local community, but also leave the range and the people there in a better state than when we got there.
Right.
And that's costly. It's expensive. So what does it cost? Exact numbers are hard to put out there, but I will tell you that in some instances I lost money, in a few instances I made money, but we are not retiring on Brutality events.
No, I mean the way for people to look at this is it's like having a charity golf tournament.
Yeah.
That it's supporting your local organization, and a lot of the expenses getting used up in running the event itself.
Yeah, most of it, like the vast majority. Shane M. Is there any chance of doing remote Brutality again? I thought that was a lot of fun, and the ability to do it without traveling is very appealing. It made me start looking into locations to do it at near me. In my opinion, it fostered a good interaction with the community and allowed people to participate that may not be able to financially do it otherwise.
We will probably do it again at some point.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of coming up with ideas that people can run anywhere that are also interesting. And I think we may end up turning this into more of a community-driven thing where, like, someone promotes their particular stage for the month or the quarter, and that's the one that everyone does. It is difficult for you and I to do these year-round because I don't want to drive out to the desert when it's 115 degrees and do this stuff.
It's actually nice today, but
yes.
yeah.
So, like, if we're going to do one, it's probably going to be during the winter months, and leave it up to other people to do the other stuff during the more warm times of the year. And also, like, our busy season for running events is basically April through August.
Yes.
For our Brutality matches. So that's why we haven't done a lot of stuff, for the middle part of the year.
So for the most part, I think the answer is yes, this will be revisited, but B, I think what we're going to do is solicit it from our community base, and then we will funnel it through InRange as an official remote Brutality, but we will work in our cool and awesome, amazing group of people to make that happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to happen again. Ahmad A. For folks thinking of starting a business in this industry, gun shop or otherwise, this is not exactly brutality, but I guess it is. What recommendations? This is good for you. What recommendations would you give them before they invest time and or money?
Don't.
I mean, I hate to say this, but like, I have the same answer. Like, this industry is let's put it this.
It's
I
volatile.
was going to go there. If you're comfortable with high risk volatility, okay, but the amount of overhead just to start something is intense, and the chance of you losing all of it or more is the likely scenario. Very similar to opening restaurants, actually.
What I would tell people is, unless you are truly passionate about this and this is your calling, like, keep it your hobby. Um, or it needs to be an adjacent thing to another business you're already running. Like, if you run a CNC shop, like, you can do gun parts as a side business and not make it your full on focus.
So, like, you're most of the time you're licensed to make Hello Kitty keychains, but on the side you make some badass AR-15s.
Yeah, or selector levers or something like
Whatever
that.
the thing is you have like a particular passion about.
Mhm.
You're a charging handle guy. You just want to make charging handles. You love charging handles. You make them on the spare cycles on your CNC machine when you're not making Hello Kitty.
Right.
That makes sense.
Or same thing with injection molding, or now with 3D printing, we're seeing people get into 3D printing is probably like the lowest barrier of entry to.
Well, yeah, that's the thing you can do for it depending on where you live. You can use your passion to do stuff like that at home and not be in the business.
I mean, I just bought some different Surefire light keys and Insight or Inforce light keys from some online company that all they do is 3D print stuff.
Yep.
They figured it out and they just sell it for like $10 plus shipping.
Yeah, for people that can't print at home, you could do it for them, right?
Or you just don't want to bother with it, right? So there's that sort of entry to get into.
Keep in mind, you can't 3D print guns for other people unless you're an FFL and all.
Right.
Like, we're not saying that, but like you could print bits and baubles and things.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of widgets people will
Sure.
buy, right?
Right.
Yeah, I really can't recommend getting into it. Like, I don't want to get too political about this, but like, the cycles of gun sales are highly politically driven.
Yep.
There's a surge every 4 years, unless there's been a massive surge like we had in 2020 to 2021. And now the entire industry is in recession and companies are going bankrupt. And everyone I talk to is at about 25 to 30% of normal business volume, let alone like surge volume, right? So we're going to see companies start dropping off more than they already have, and and the ones that don't are going to get very lean to stay operational.
Yeah, I guess that's a prediction. But over the next coming years, people are going to be like, "But it's a gun-friendly administration." We're not getting political here. I'm just saying. The reality is, I think you're going to see a huge purge of firearms manufacturers over the next couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw the same slump from 2016 to 2019, and then we just had 16 months of insane sustained sales.
Yeah.
Because of the trifecta of COVID and fears related to it,
Yeah.
and then summer domestic disturbances and riots, and then the election cycle amping things up as it normally does. And what that did, in my opinion, was it pulled all the sales from the next 4 years forward to 2020 to 2020.
It compressed that sales window into a bubble.
Yep, and that's why you're seeing like insane deals and insane rebates right now. I mean, like, I saw Beretta APX pistols, which we've reviewed on the channel before, down to $250 after rebate.
Yep, it's the reason I was able to pick up an unfired Tavor at the local pawn shop for like $400.
Right.
Some person, I don't know who, was like panicked and was like, "I need a gun," and they just bought a black gun that takes magazines. And then a year later, they're like, "I don't know what to do with this," and they just gave it to the pawn shop.
Yeah, my local pawn shop has a trash can full of AR-15s, like $500. Pick one.
It was 2017 when I said AR-15s were cordwood, and they are cordwood, right?
Right. So
Yeah.
It is a buyer's market. Enjoy it, and it will go back up at some point, just because the cost of everything has gone up.
Sure.
With labor and materials, etc.
Yeah.
But for right now, the cost of AR-15s is at like a negative inflation rate. I was just looking back at my first AR I bought in 1999, cost like $800.
Yeah, they're worth less now.
In today's money, that would be about just under $1,600. And today you can buy an AR-15 for $500 to $600 of the same
less
type.
Sometimes.
So.
Now that said, other firearms that are collectible continue to rise.
Yes.
But AR-15s, Glockish things, these are not heirloom items at this point.
No, and even stuff like 2011s are going down in cost because the patents have expired and everyone's producing them.
Yep.
So
So, how's that for long-winded? So that being said, because you wanted that bubble, you were actually instigating the riots because everyone accuses the firearms industry of doing that.
no, it's very frustrating when I see people accuse the firearms industry of promoting like fear and discontent.
Some
Uh,
do, some do,
some do, but
some do.
in general, I think that denies the agency of the public that just watch what's going on around them and reacts organically.
Or the media.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, like they just need to turn on the news and react to what's going on, and they'll buy stuff. I saw the same thing after 9/11 being in the industry. Saw the same thing after various high-profile mass shootings and terrorist attacks,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's just a cycle of that stuff. The industry didn't have to do anything in many of those cases to get sales going. It just happened as people reacted organically and talked to each other. And just like toilet paper, if there's a
I
shortage,
was just going there.
if there's a shortage will perpetuate a shortage until you can walk in and buy it off the shelf at any
Yep,
time.
yep. So this is my point: is that I think we would all agree that like big toilet paper didn't instigate the rush of toilet paper sales,
Right.
but somehow that became the thing, and like, and it's happening again. By the way,
Hmm.
there was when there was fear of a hurricane hitting New Orleans, there was a rush on toilet paper.
Okay.
Like, so this is now the thing, and so, but the point is, the toilet paper industry didn't manufacture a fear to sell more TP. They just landed up getting stuck in that maelstrom.
Right.
And while the firearms industry has done that sometimes, in general, most of the industry is just a victim of the tidal pool,
Yeah.
the waves, the current. Like, you flow with the river, whichever way it goes. And it turns out tomorrow there's like a fear. Orson Welles puts out the new War of the Worlds, and there's a rush on firearms because the aliens are coming.
Right.
Right? No, it's not in anyone's control. That is to a large degree. Well, the media, but that's a whole nother topic. Joshua S. What's your strategy for managing long range targets under physical stress or under time stress? I.e., do you ignore the par time and make the hits, send several and adjust based on the miss? This has been a real issue for me in 2-gun matches, and I'm not sure if it's mental, practice, or both.
I think I can talk about it because I'm actually pretty good at it. Do a lot of intermediate range rifle matches at
Sure.
my local club, and those are the stages I tend to excel at our matches too. And it's a balance of getting stable enough, quick enough, and controlling your respiration to make a good enough shot. And observing your hits downrange and your misses downrange and adjusting accordingly. It is very common that I observe people shooting stages and like it's the same miss, right? And there's a gust of wind blowing.
Yeah.
It's a right. Gust
Missing
of wind
right, missing right, missing right, missing right. Might be a clue to aim a little left.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So, and one thing I constantly do as I'm shooting is I'm observing that for that feedback downrange and adjusting accordingly. So if I see a hit off like right, then I can kind of gauge based on the target size where that hit is.
Yep.
I immediately correct where I'm holding on the target to make the hit. And it is very rare that you're going to have perfect supported positions at any action match. You're going to need to just get as good as you can. And as your reticle or your dot crosses onto the target or where you want it to be to make that shot, you send it.
There's also many instances in which you may not be able to actually see an impact to direct from.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where your ability to, quote, call the shot matters. And you call the shot based on the amount of skill you've acquired in precision shooting, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something I get to have a lot of from my old days of shooting a decade plus of NRA high power, where you essentially lay on the ground and shoot groups, right? Literally shooting groups at range. But there's no impact berm to call misses. You're just like, you're calling the shot when you press the trigger and send it. You in your mind know where that went because you knew everything you did was either right or wrong when it went.
Mm-hmm.
That's calling the shot. And the only way you acquire that is from, frankly, lots of shooting. The quickest way to acquire that is, this is boring, is to sit and lay and shoot groups at range.
Yeah.
Not 50-yard groups, like 100-yard, 200-yard groups. And when you start making tighter and tighter groups and knowing where those rounds are going when you press the trigger, that'll help you adjust for calling the shot when you screw it up on that wobbly barricade at a brutality bat.
And this is one area where I still see people showing up to our matches with like not zeroed guns or
Yeah.
not very well zeroed guns.
Yeah.
Zeroing your gun standing 25 yards at an indoor range is not sufficient to do well at these events.
No, and if you do not have utter confidence in your zero, when you're missing, you in your brain can go, is it my sight or is it me? You should know it's not my sights.
Right. Yeah, the minimum I'm going to tell people to zero at for our events is 50 yards, and you need to remove every human variable you can when doing it, which
Yep.
means shooting off a sandbag, shooting off your bipod, and making sure that all those errors are minimized and that you are shooting to the mechanical accuracy of your gun.
And you might be missing because your scope cover's on. You can't see through it.
Yeah, that too.
At the same note, I would say there's another question here about time. Of course, it's important to be as quick and efficient as you can be on the clock. But if you are allowing the clock to cause you to make stress time related mistakes, you're allowing your concern about time to be too great. The clock is just a beep. It's now time to do the thing you do.
Something to keep in mind on intermediate range stages, and I'm going to use that term because like inside 500 yards is really intermediate range.
I think most people now think 100 yards, but
Yeah.
truth is 100 yards is still CQB.
Right. So is a fast long range stage very rarely looks fast. Like, and the fastest ones, it's not that you were like super fast shooting, it's that you just missed less or not at all.
Or you actually were slow and boring, or not slow, but you sit there and go, take your sight picture, do the whole, send it.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't look cool on the clock.
No, it doesn't. Actually,
Yeah.
if you look at some of the like black rifle match videos on my channel, you'll hear my respiration do exactly that before I send shots. And it looks really slow, but the times are pretty good. Every missed shot you have is on average 3 to 5 seconds of additional time to reset, reacquire the target, and send it again.
It is not without irony that if you really pay attention to how we design brutality match stages, there's a large emphasis on first round hits. A lot of hit the target, hit a move to another target, then go back. All that is based on focusing on that.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a good Wyatt Earp quote. Fast is nice, accuracy's final.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that helps. All right. I can actually read this without these, but it's like, whoa. The flex capacitor. What is your recommended baseline of physical fitness for a brutality match? I am finally physically stabilizing from a pretty serious autoimmune disease diagnosis and am able to consistently exercise again after 18 months. Well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear about that. That's a challenge. We all have our challenges, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like whether it's an autoimmune issue, vision failing,
lingering injuries.
Yeah, I mean, I just recently actually got really injured in my left leg from a fall. Not in a match. I had a injury while working on a house. And my leg is trashed right now.
I regularly see a physical therapist for a torn hamstring injury and tendon impingements in my shoulders and things like that to work through.
That said, I think the thing that you emphasize, I think the biggest emphasis, if there is to have one at a brutality event, is cardio. Right?
Yeah, the way I phrase it is you need to be able to go all out, whatever your all out is, for 180 seconds at a time, once an hour.
And then you can vomit and lay down.
Yep.
We've also, over time, designed these stages to be more aligned with making sure they're viable for most people to be able to actually do them.
Without hurting themselves.
Right. So, for example, we have a large variety of types of people coming to the event. Myself being one of them, like included. I'm getting older. I've been running this channel now for 10 years. We're not designing them to be lesser, but we're designing them to ensure that they're safe. Like, what did you say? OSHA requirements?
Yeah, it's like sort of like OSHA requirements. Like, we're not going to have you climb over things taller than 4 feet because the risk of serious injury of falling from 6 feet is substantial.
Which actually we've seen happen.
Yes.
Not at our events, but there was the old Tiger Valley event where I saw people fall off a fence that was, 10 feet tall?
Yes.
And they landed on their back.
On top of a rifle.
On top of a rifle. This kind of stuff is unnecessary risk.
Right. So likewise, we're probably not going to have you carry anything more than 50 pounds.
No, we've kind of standardized on around 50 to 58 pounds.
Yeah, and we're probably not going to have you drag anything more than 150 pounds.
Well,
we're probably not going to have you crawl through anything that's lower than 18 inches.
Yep.
And these are all just kind of mean things so that, yes, it will, like crawling through something 18 inches will be easier for a smaller person, but it's not impossible for a bigger person. Carrying something that's 50 pounds will be easier for a bigger, stronger person, but it's not impossible for the lower end of the spectrum of person attending our events. And we really don't want people getting hurt attending these things. Everyone needs to be able to go back to their job on Monday when it's over and not have a prolonged recovery period.
Whether you see these as just recreational events, matches, or training events, and you can see them as all three at the same time. there is no value in going to this to go away from it actually injured or even permanently injured, because you've now done more damage to your goals than benefit.
Yeah, and to that end, like this is why the Casarda drill is now a bonus stage you opt into to potentially win a prize or a free entry to another brutality match, because we don't want to force people to do this that have physical limitations that make it physically painful or impossible for them to complete.
We had one person show up once when we had a Casarda drill as part of the match, and they had gotten out of the hospital from heart surgery.
Like
They
just
literally had
staple still.
like still in their like their what I saw that, I'm like, what?
Yep.
You're here. When was your heart surgery? And they're like,
6 weeks ago.
And I'm like, what? And
did your doctor clear you for this?
And your sternum's held together with staples? What? Like, I mean, like,
yeah.
People will do some interesting things. So we are still doing the Casarda drill. It is kind of the DNA, and people want it, but it's optional.
Yep.
It's a bonus.
And the counterpart for the people who want to be a little more marksmanship focused, we're going to offer it on the same bay as the Sinistral drill, which is a spinner's master course. So like if you don't feel like you want to throw a kettlebell, you can do this as an alternate thing.
Sure. So I guess the question is, what's the baseline level? The baseline level is to do what's right for you.
Right.
Like, frankly, that person with the recent heart surgery probably shouldn't have been there. But my answer to them would be like, well, what's right for you? Is it a mile walk every day? A mile walk every day is better than no walk every day. So it's kind of along the question of be healthy. And if there's something at a brutality event that is above and beyond your pay grade, here's the simple answer: don't do it.
A very simple thing that I think a lot of people could do that will help them with their marksmanship part of this is whatever the weight of your rifle is, get hand weights that simulate about double that weight.
Sure.
Which will usually be about maybe 15 to 20 pounds tops. High reps, arm exercises, so that you can hold your gun up when you're tired. You can do these tasks after you've carried something, and that will make the biggest difference in your shooting from a physical performance perspective, in my experience.
I agree with all that. Jordan W. It's great that you have the trademark for brutality events in the USA, but what are your feelings about the brutality events being held abroad? Well, this is kind of a complicated question. So yes, In Range Productions, I hold the trademark on brutality in regards to shooting competitions within the USA. So a brutality match, trademarks have to be actually, believe it or not, more specific than you'd think. Like, that word is used in other things too, but brutality in regards to shooting events is a trademark that I hold. And I did that not for some sort of like financial dominion. I did it because we have a very specific vibe and goals in terms of community building and types of events that we want to run. And by holding the trademark means that I have some level of making sure that name means something. When you come to a match that's called a brutality event run by us, you know what you're getting. Not only in terms of stage design, etc., but in terms of intentional inclusivity and a friendly event and space in which you can be comfortable regardless of who you are.
And this is really no different than USPSA being trademarked and IDPA being trademarked. They're all particular brands. They mean different things. Or for example, Tough Mudder being trademarked.
Absolutely. It's exactly the same thing. And a lot of that, in spite of, is still cultural too. Like, I'm going to go ahead and throw some shade. When you, for example, USPSA is trademarked, but you know what you're getting when you go there. You get some guy yelling at you about breaking the rules. Like, you just know what you're getting. Like, you go there to get yelled at about breaking the rules. You come to our event, you know what you're getting. You're getting a place where we make sure that this is a place that you're going to be comfortable, because that's what this is about. Comfortable in terms of the space.
Yes, and we tend to treat our competitors as customers more than potential people to be adjudicated against.
Well, they are. I mean, we are. But I want brutality events in the USA to be that inclusive space where people build community, friendships, but also skill building, and treat everyone with respect. And if there's someone not doing that, we don't allow it. And that's part of why I want the trademark, to make sure we enforce that and control that. So your question is, how do I feel about the ones abroad? Well, I was part of starting the very first one that was abroad, which was Finnish Brutality, in collaboration with Varusteleka. And then Polinar Tacticals running Lynx Brutality, which they just kind of did on their own. I've never been to it, but they've always been friendly in terms of attribution and posting the history of the event. But I didn't know that Varusteleka trademarked it in Europe. They did that without telling me. And if you want my honest opinion, we have gone different paths. um, the Brutality matches in the USA are meant to be training, skill building events that are community focused and inclusive. And I no longer attend the ones in Europe because they are focused on more like mill vet sim culture. And
I think it's a marketing event.
yes, it is.
It's a marketing event for Varstaleka, and that's why they can do the things like the explosions, the armored vehicles, all that stuff. Because if it was coming out of just match fees, it probably wouldn't happen.
Oh no, they're running. I At least early ones ran in the red. They
Right.
lost money on them because they were using it as a marketing event to sell their surplus and their products.
Right. So and you can see that in they're very celebrity, elite focused in their way they promote it and the people that are coming over to do it. I would say that a fundamental difference with our events is, uh, yes, there is an entry fee, but anybody can come attend our events.
Hmm.
There isn't a big barrier of entry to attend as long as you can get yourself there.
Yeah, yeah. But like I think you were pointing out is like those are more it's more of a marketing event and they're very focused on like celebrity and influencers being there, which frankly I don't give a shit about. Um, like if people want to come, please do. But like I don't care. I'm not going to go solicit that.
Right. If media people want to attend our events,
They
like
pay the
that,
fee and come on in
yeah, or if it's actually beneficial enough for us, we've comped media slots before.
occasionally.
But we have a media policy of attribution you got to comply with, and it's really not a big deal.
But what we're not doing is going out there begging some e-celeb to come shoot our event and pay for them to come there so that they can come and impregnate someone.
No,
Right? That's what we're not doing.
no, we're not doing
And so
that.
that right there is the differentiation. I had I did have pretty deep conversations on the back end about the vibes and the the inclusiveness element of what this is about here for me with in range and brutality events, and the reality is the vibes and the culture that they were building in theirs was not aligned with mine, so I don't go.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of the way things go with a lot of events over time. Is things break off, people have different focuses and different emphasis,
Yep.
and that isn't going to stop us from doing what we're doing.
Nope. And it's not stopping them. They got the trademark there, and I've got the trademark here. Landrick H. Do you see brutality matches expanding further around the country? I attended my first one in September, really enjoyed the match and the unique combination of people in attendance. I am a Second Amendment absolutist. I often find people expecting me to subscribe to all sorts of positions that I've been shoehorned to. It was refreshing to attend an event where there was none of that. I would like to see that sort of shooting environment expand as much as possible. Well, I guess we sort of addressed this early on. Expansion's hard.
Expansion is hard, and there's only so many hours available for us to do these sorts of things. I would like to see the events we're running get a little more full before we start to expand out from where we're at. But if you want to run a brutality match uh, local to you, or you have a facility where this could work, it benefits us the most if you're our contact person on the ground there that can answer basic questions about, will they allow an outside group to run an event there?
Mhm.
What sort of financials do they need to have the range paid for? What does it cost to use the facility?
Does it provide targets?
Does it provide targets? Do we have access to props? Like these basic logistical questions, like how far is it from the nearest airport? What sort of lodging's available locally?
Yeah.
Like all these sorts of things. And then sometimes if it's not a gun friendly state, like even if we had the perfect facility in California,
It'd be difficult because the types of things we could do Deadeye.
yeah, we could probably do Deadeye and a limited Roaring 20s sort of thing
Yeah,
there.
yeah, we could.
But most of our competitors from the rest of the country aren't going to go because they can't use their modern stuff.
Yep.
So like these are all like competing things that go into running an event. And we've even had like locals from a club that is well suited to host an event like this do all the legwork only for their local board to vote it down because they don't want outside organizations running events at their
Or it's
facility.
not USPSA or something like
Right.
that. Mhm.
Right.
I'm
So
not pointing at them specifically. What I mean by that is one of the more formally recognized larger disciplines.
right, yeah, they're like if
It's not IDP or USPSA or IPSC or whatever.
yeah, if you came in and like you could almost even run the same stages, but if it was under a major brand that already existed
Yeah.
that they had their heads around, they would approve it. But because it's not something that is as well known, they're more resistant to it.
Lastly, for people to want to attend and put in the effort, and I get this fully, to buy a ticket, travel, and all the things you have to do, it should be, and we try very hard to use ranges that are unique in appearance and what they provide. So
Right.
in Woodland, we have big outdoor spaces. High desert, we've got long desert like vistas where we can shoot the distance and all sorts of filthy trenches to crawl through and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, Utah, which is a wonderful facility, and they've been very good to us. The
And it's an
subs
excellent proximity to lodging and restaurants
Oh,
and everything
the
else.
most convenient of all. It's all just a bunch of square bays,
Mhm.
which means we've come to find we can only really do CQB there.
Right.
And what we find from the audience is there's less interest because it's not a cool sweeping desert trench system or something like that.
Right. And to me, our CQB format is actually like the most pure fun.
It actually
Like
is.
those are the stages I like to just go through and just burn them down with a PCC
Mhm.
or something fun in Cyberpunk. That's also the first time I tried Deadeye. So
Yep.
I like the CQB format, and I think it's a lot of fun, and we're starting to see it generate some traction. But the new ideas we're coming out with are usually about 3 to 4 years ahead of where people are at with what they're wanting to do, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So we have to run events 3 or 4 times to really get people interested in them, and this will be like our third CQB event coming up in April. So
To summarize the answer, if you are a person that knows a facility that will fulfill all of the aforementioned requirements,
yep,
and you have contact with the insider element of it, the board, that is the best chance of us being able to do this. Cold calling fails.
yep,
We have done a lot of work to try to reach out to other parts of the country in this regard, and frankly have failed. The only places we're succeeding are the ones in which we have actual inside connections, and there are instances in which we had inside connections and still did not succeed.
right.
So,
So if you have a facility and you can answer those basic questions, you can email me at matchcoordinator@inrange.tv.
Yep.
And it's something we can certainly consider. But we also need to keep events spaced out far enough apart so that we're not cannibalizing our own competitor base by having them too close together.
no, you're right. Like that's true as well.
Because even for regional events, we still have about 50% of the people are people who go to every one of these things.
Yeah, because they're diehards and they
Yep.
love it and they're awesome.
And then the rest is all locals that are attending like their local thing within about an 8 to 10 hour radius.
Fair enough. Jordan S. Which single Brutality match has been your favorite and why? This is hard.
It is hard because they're all different, and I've had different fun experiences at them.
I'm not going to answer this because I'm like, I know which was my least favorite. But after the one that I kind of like, that wasn't it. The rest of it all been like, honestly, they've all been good.
Like my favorites are honestly the high desert ones.
Okay.
We've only run 2 of them so far. Part of that is I have kind of an emotional bond to that range because that's the first range that I shot it's technically the second, but like I shot Iron Man 3 gun there for like 15 years.
Yep.
And I've done a lot of big events up there. I like the facility. I like the open terrain. I like the desert environment. And it allows us to do some unique things like shooting out the back of a moving truck and
Yeah,
and
they're very flexible.
and it's kind of like it's like there's square bays, but they're not really square bays because of all the weird trenches and stuff dug into the facility. So it's just a cool place to be, and I like shooting rifles out to 500 yards.
It's hard. I really enjoy the CQB events the best. I think they're the most fun.
Mhm.
Also, partially because I love Deadeye
Right.
and I love blazing with my freaking lever guns. So there's that. Weirdly, I think my answer is, even though it wasn't probably the best one or even the best run one, the first one was awesome. We had this great facility and we were shooting from like mountaintop to mountaintop, and very hard to see like targets that were almost, you have to find the target and hit it. That was cool. I don't know that I have a favorite, although I think I enjoy CQB ones the best.
Yeah, the element of CQB ones that I like is it's just inherently lower stress. You can easily see all the targets. Like you don't have to worry about like what's the weather conditions going to be when I'm shooting rifle at
No,
distance out
actually
here.
at CQB East we did. It started raining. It became a mud pit. So it didn't. That didn't. We still had to worry about the weather conditions.
It was unpleasant, but it didn't dramatically affect how people did on the stages versus like a rainstorm
No, it just
at
became
400 yards.
yucko.
Yes.
Yeah. That's where the hardest thing are the night matches. Oh my gosh, the conditions from one night to another with night vision.
Hmm.
Like you can have full moon 2 nights in a row, but one night you have cloud cover and one night you don't.
Yeah,
It's an entirely different thing.
Yeah, the last after dark match, like when the staff night,
You couldn't see anything.
Was horrendous because it was like that constant drizzle
Yep.
that was obscuring everything downrange.
You could have Gen 4 panos and it was hard to see downrange.
Right, like past about 50 yards.
Uh-huh.
And then the next night it was like completely clear.
You
like,
could almost naked eye it.
Yeah, bright moonlight, etc.
One day later.
So to that end, I we could probably note that like we're not necessarily running a dedicated midnight brutality event anymore. It's after dark addendums
we add them on
to the events we're already running when possible.
So we are still doing night vision and white light matches. They just added on. So there's like woodland brutality after dark.
Right.
So Zachary B. Other than for carrying the rifle between stages, do slings have use cases in brutality matches as stabilizing aids? Does stage design and the time it takes to deploy the sling generally make this tactically suboptimal? I can't recall you ever seeing you use a sling this way in many matches. Does modern military doctrine still embrace slings as firing aids? And if so, what distinguishes military effectiveness on the clock versus competition? Slings can, I just mentioned earlier, I shot NRA high power for a decade. You use slings as your support. Well, we did. You would tie that up to the point where you could play a note on it like a guitar string. In fact, you had to wear a special bondage suit that it didn't cut your arm off. You got that thing so tight. I'm not even kidding. It was so tight that it would cut the circulation off in your arm, even though you're wearing a big shooting vest. And it does work for support. But even hasty sling is really subpar to just resting on anything you can rest on.
Right. So essentially any times you'd want to use an offhand shooting position, like unsupported at our matches, or it's required, the marksmanship challenges aren't extreme enough to even benefit from slinging up.
No, we're 50 yards are in, or maybe even 100, but at that point, even a hasty sling isn't really necessary.
Right. I will tell you, though, that if you can make unsupported shots on man-sized targets to 200 yards, you essentially have a superpower.
You do.
Not having to get in position and be supported to make these hits regularly saves me time at events, but I don't use a sling to do it. So
I think sling support is a generally gee whiz neat range trick that in most instances of practical shooting isn't that relevant.
Yeah, I think the only time it would potentially be relevant at one of our events is if it was you started in that position rather than getting into it on the clock. Getting out of it on the clock is something you can do, but if for whatever reason we design a stage where it's there's 100 to 200 yard target that you have to shoot unsupported and you started that way, that could work, but I wouldn't think that getting into a tight sling position on the clock is relevant.
And again, does the modern military still embrace slings and firing aids? I don't think so. If they do it, it's strictly a training thing, but it's not used.
I don't know. I do know that Brian Nelson has been at the forefront of helping the Marine Corps re-standardize their training procedures, and they got a whole new marksmanship program they're rolling out, and it's all action shooting based.
I bet they're not using slings for support.
No.
Curious Gorge. If you solely focused on winning first place overall at a 2-gun match with shots that were out to 300 yards, what firearm and optic combo would you most likely use? Right there. What would Stoner do carbine with a bipod? And I happen to like the 1.5x Trigicon, but you could put that red dot in a magnifier. The what would Stoner do rifle with a good optic slays.
Yeah, for me it'd be the same thing, but with a red dot magnifier.
I like that optic, but this is,
right.
Yeah, so red dot magnifier, which by the way was the conclusion in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
But the what would Stoner do carbine with a red dot and a magnifier. Landrick H. I've signed up to shoot Deadeye with my son as a posse at Moonshine Brutality. Can you explain a little more about the concept and how it will run? Any particular pieces of equipment or methods we should avoid to keep down safety issues? I thought about a cross-draw holster, but that would be an easy way to flag a partner. Well, one, you don't want to flag anyone. But even if you were cross-drawing, and we wouldn't let you flag them if you were, you would probably move in a way that you would draw where you're not flagging.
You would pivot your hip downrange and then draw from it.
In SAS, we call that the dance.
Yeah.
If you're shooting a cross-draw holster and you're facing the targets downrange, if you draw from here, you're breaking the 180 in SAS. Mm-hmm. So what you do is you do the dance. You just turn right, draw, and then do this. That's what you need to be cognizant of. That said, guess what? You're going to have the hammer down on an empty chamber anyway.
Right.
So any movement in posse or gang war, the gun's either going to be proactively unloaded, or with manual actions like a lever gun, the lever will be down with a hammer down on a fired round.
Yeah, and that's what the RO is going to be watching for.
So you're not moving ever with a live round in a chamber.
Correct.
Period. The end. That's how we solve the problem.
The interesting thing, though, in those divisions is each teammate only has access to one long gun. So you will have stages where you're both using your rifles. You might have a stage where one's using a rifle, one's using a shotgun. That's going to be up to you to determine what the best way for you to shoot it is when you're there.
Yep. Henry S., what brutality event has been the most difficult to run? Well, that's easy for me. Midnight Brutality.
Yes, running everything at night is definitely harder, and
really hard.
And figuring out the stages that worked well for white light, night vision with active illumination, and then like no illumination is a very difficult balance.
No matter how good the conditions are outside, the reality is that something that looks like ridiculously easy in the day becomes incredibly more difficult at night, even with the best night vision.
And we've also seen it flip-flop where sometimes like white light is like the answer and it's no different than shooting in the day, and then like a different set of circumstances, like the white light shooter couldn't see anything.
Correct. And
the night vision shooter could see and easily hit the target. So finding a balance of what works has been difficult, and I think we've finally gotten there with like the last couple after dark events we've run.
It's taken us a couple tries, to be blunt.
So, and part of this too is like why we're running them as addendums with only 2 or maybe 3 stages. Is when somebody signs up and does a full Midnight Brutality event of like 6 or 7 stages, and on stage 1 they find out their light sucks or their night vision isn't working that great. Doing 5 or 6 more iterations of that is just painful. When what we found is that typically the people who, like at least half the people showing up, are really struggling with equipment issues.
Yes. Because
they don't get a chance to use this stuff.
No, this is like, right, I agree.
It's more like the after dark events are more of a learning experience than an actual match.
But they are a match.
Yeah, they are a match. There is score, but like the people attending, like it's more like you can tell it's more like about learning how their stuff actually works, because they never had a chance to even do anything with it before. You
could walk around with your gee whiz expensive ass night vision all day long and practice and then you come to this and you will suddenly learn that, man, my illuminator ain't it, or whatever. The learning experience of the night matches are very dramatic.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of people start shifting their equipment.
Yep.
Maybe we'll get back to running a full dedicated night match at some point as we get more and more people with full equipment sets and skills capable of doing it. But for the most part, I think people are getting out of what they need to get out of it in 2 or 3 stages.
So you snickered when I said midnight. What was yours most difficult?
Most difficult for me was when I got food poisoning on the way to Woodland Brutality.
Yeah, tell the story.
Stopped in Albuquerque to get dinner at Cracker Barrel and got horrific food poisoning.
You did go to Cracker Barrel. You should have gone to Red Lobster.
Well, Cracker Barrel hadn't betrayed me before, but that time they did. And even with one of my doctor friends calling in a script for antibiotics for me, like I was super messed up driving across the country.
You were.
My friend Allie did most of the driving all the way there. Yeah. And fortunately, I hadn't been traveling by myself. We ended up getting there like late after setup was mostly done. I was sick throughout the event, and I was sick like a week after the event.
You were shooting while you were like trying to hold it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Casarda drill doing that was pretty rough. I got a good picture of me looking like I was just dead, like when it was over. So yeah, that was the most difficult one for me to run.
Although it wasn't because of the match, it was because you decided to poison yourself with capitalist American foodstuffs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
all right, fair enough. Lo mein, spelt in a fun way. Lo mein, I love it. Clever. What is your absolute pie in the sky vision for brutality? Money, no object. That kind of thing. You start first. I got my own. I'm sure we're gonna have a different.
I would like to run an event every other month, with about 200 to 300 shooters.
So it's just the amount of events, not a specific thing you'd want to do at an event?
Well, if one thing I would really like to do for an event, if we could ever get something going in Vegas, is get the guys from the gun store with all their Hollywood guns out there as stage guns. Like, that's the kind of thing I would want to do if their money was no object. Like, just, hey, like the smart gun is on the stage. There's a pulse rifle on the stage. Like, Wookiee bowcaster on the stage as part of the theming, and buy targets appropriate themed for all of the stages.
Not burning cars with tanks?
I'm not sure that actually really benefits the stage design at all. It certainly adds the aesthetic and the carbon footprint of
It
the
looks
event.
cool if you're making a marketing event, though.
Yes.
My answer is going to be boring to some of you and awesome to others. Mine would be to have a completely dedicated, all black powder Deadeye event. It won't ever happen because we don't have enough people who would want to do it. But I would love that, and I would love it to have moving targets
No, if money was no object, though, what we would do is you would just show up and you'd be issued your lever gun.
with black powder cartridges.
Yeah, like
Yeah, that's
you
true.
or there would be a gun handler assigned to every squad that managed the guns, and
Yeah.
people just showed up. They didn't have to bring any equipment. The guns were just there, and they shoot the match with them.
That's what I would want. An all black powder dedicated Deadeye event, which is like, I would love that. Thomas K. It's a pleasure running to you in DEF CON. Hello. What's a good way? I'm going to let you do this one because I think you're better at this. What's a good way for a complete noob to get into a Brutality match?
I would recommend attending one of the CQB ones.
Yeah.
In PCC or Cyberpunk division.
Okay.
Those are the most novice friendly, and it's just a matter of like what manner of PCC or SBR you're using.
Sure.
You'll be able to hit all the targets. You'll be able to like understand what the match process is without worrying about not being able to complete the stages.
Yep.
And I think it's just the most fun way to do it. And to prep for going to one of these events, well, there's complete match videos on InRange. There's complete match videos on my channel. There's like complete match videos from a lot of other people who've attended them in all sorts of different divisions. And whenever I go to a new event I haven't been to before, I still watch videos from the people who've attended it before, so I know what I'm getting into.
Yeah, I agree with all that. So I agree with what you said. The CQE events would be the most accessible. A PCC or Cyberpunk, which would allow you to use shotguns or other kind of PCC stuff, would be the easiest division to have the most fun with. But the only thing you really need to know is basic safety.
Right.
If you have your basic safety down, i.e., you understand the idea of a 180, you understand how to load and unload, you understand how to manipulate your safeties and not flag anyone, there's no reason not to show up.
Right.
We'll get you through, right?
Yeah, and our staff coaches people through the stages. Yeah. Like if you don't know what you're doing, our staff is going to coach you through it. They're going to call your hits. They're going to give you corrections if you want it. If you don't want it, you can tell them, "Hey, I don't want the help."
Yeah, shut up.
but our staff is trained to help get you through the stage.
And the point of these events is, like I said, all the things. It's community building, fun, enjoy yourself, but also to walk away from this, regardless of what skills you came to it with, to walk away with it with more. Wherever, if you started at 0 or you came in here with 100, you walk away with more. All right, last question. You ready?
Yep.
Tim O. Brutality matches now have a Cyberpunk division that doesn't enforce but promotes Bullpups. What is the driver for Bullpups? Really simple. 1, Bullpups are Cyberpunk. They look cool. Like what Cyberpunk thing doesn't? What Bullpup doesn't look Cyberpunk?
Yeah, I mean they're very thematically appropriate. Now you can use non-bullpup guns as long as they are not AR-15s and they have barrels under 16 inches. So it's like the catch-all of all the other weird stuff.
So, but the driver for Bullpups was simple as this: no one will use them in other divisions.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
But you did at Cyberpunk.
I did.
And you actually liked it.
I liked it, and the reason being is I know I'm only competing against other bullpups.
Well, that you just answered the exact reason that there's a focus on Bullpups. It is a cool, thematic, aesthetically neat thing that drives people to use guns that they otherwise would likely never use otherwise.
Right.
That's it. That's the reason.
Yep, and I'm going to keep dragging that bullpup out at least once a year to do Cyberpunk division.
You said the Wolverine really was like, you didn't even notice. It wasn't really in the way at all, right?
No, like the weirdest part was getting used to changing mags, but because we're generally doing that during movement on a stage, it didn't hurt me too much.
But when it came to shooting and such?
No, it was fine.
Yeah.
A little bit heavier trigger pull than I'm used to, but the key thing I think to use a bullpup effectively if you're used to using traditional rifles is the handguard has to be long enough for you to use traditional supporting methods.
Yeah, that's true. If you got little stubby there and you can't like rest on anything, you got a problem.
Yeah, that particularly for like shooting out to 400 or 500 yards, like being able to rest the gun as I would normally rest and support the gun made it very easy to transition to using the bullpup. Versus one of the other bullpups we'd shot before that had like a very stubby, tiny handguard and like trying to work with.
And you're like, yeah.
Like there was, and I'm like trying to figure out how to use the supported positions on the clock wasn't good. So,
well, those are the last questions. So, I'd like to first of all say thank you to everyone that provided those questions. Everyone that made asked a question there is a Patreon supporter, and a lot of them, of course, are Brutality event shooters. So, what I want to say is that Patreons get early access with discount to all events.
Hmm.
And actually, Woodland and such is getting close to full before it even goes to public.
It's like 80% full before it's public.
Right, which means you get to do a lot of things like dictate which day you shoot, maybe whose squad you're on, other things. You also get in there early,
Hmm.
so that's good for that. Additionally, I am now doing Q&As on a quarterly basis that are AMA. You can ask me anything, but they are Patreon only. So, anyways, the point being is thank you for supporting the channel and keeping us alive. Patreon.com/InRangeTV. If you'd like early access to one of those events or some of the cool perks that we do, try supporting us there. Patreon.com/InRangeTV. Every dollar counts. If you can't, hopefully you enjoyed the video regardless. Subscribe, share with your friends, and if you want to come to a Brutality match, Patreon or not, brutalitymatches.org have a list of all the events we're going to have and links to the practice score to sign up, as well as all of the division rules and such, so you can understand what you'd be doing regardless of what division you're in. Anything you want to add?
I think we've pretty much covered it in depth.
Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more.